He's all balls, no strikes. Ladies and gentlemen, it's John Canzano, who joins us for his weekly visit, johncanzano.com. John Canzano, BFT, the bald-faced truth, the radio there in Portland, Oregon, 7:50 the game, 3 to 6 p.m. every single day. Yeah, you were all balls, no strikes.
Thanks, man. I think.
Hey, what position did you play when you were playing?
In college, I played outfield. I played left field at my college team. So, but I had, I played community college baseball. I had a manager at one time that let me play all 9 positions in a game. Every inning I switched. And
awesome.
Because I grew up, my dad played professional baseball. He was in AAA with the Mets in 1969 when they won the World Series. And one of his big things was he wanted me to understand the game. And so when I was a little leaguer, he had me play catcher. He had me learn third base, shortstop, middle infield, outfield positions. I pitched a tiny little bit.
That's smart.
But so by the time I got to community college, I was comfortable, seeing the game from every position. I think kids should do that. I think you should play, you don't have to play 9 positions, but play the outfield a little bit, play the infield.
Sure.
It's great if you can catch because coach and team. The catcher sees the whole field. The catcher has an understanding of the game that nobody else has.
Yeah, it's fun. The Pete Rose. I don't think we talked about this last week. I mean, you're a huge baseball fan, obviously.
I got a vote. I have a vote in the Hall of Fame vote, but I'm not on that committee that would put Rose in or not. So,
but let's say they did allow it for writers to vote him in. What would you do?
Well, I disagree with the last guest you had on, with all respect, but he mentioned it. It was a lifetime ban. Pete Rose the rule was you're banned for life. It didn't say you're banned for all of eternity and damned to hell. And so I think he served that punishment. He had a lifetime ban. He didn't get the satisfaction of being into the Hall of Fame. But from my viewpoint, the Hall of Fame's a museum, Puck. It's Cooperstown. It tells the story of baseball. If you've ever been to the Hall of Fame or even the Negro League Hall of Fame in Kansas City, you walk through and you get an understanding of what was happening in our country, what was happening in the game, the ethics, the values, the morality of culture by being in those museums. And I think Pete Rose has a place in that. I do think it should be noted if and when he's inducted that he was banned from baseball for life for betting on baseball. He broke the cardinal rule and did not get into the Hall of Fame in his life. But it's part of the history of baseball. He's got more hits than anyone. Like Shoeless Joe Jackson, who has the 4th highest all-time career batting average. They both belong in there. And it's part of the story, but tell the story, ugliness included. Pete Rose was kind of a scumbag, but man, could he hit.
Yeah. Do we believe, though, because what at the heart of the issue with him is he acknowledges, I bet on baseball, which, again, was illegal at the time. Well, it's still illegal now. They can't bet on it, even though that they've obviously have the relationship with all the gambling outlets that they do now. But he says he never bet on them to lose. See, I don't believe him because he's a notorious liar, and it had been his entire life. So I never believe that, and I don't know if that changes anyone's opinion about him. It's one of these topics that I sometimes get I'm on the fence so much on.
Sure.
Because there are not good people in the Hall of Fame.
Oh yeah, racists and the worst.
But I guess for him, if he did, which I don't, I do believe that he probably did. If he did bet on them to lose. See, I think to me that just that tarnishes the game and the respect for the game.
It does. But are you putting Pete Rose into the Hall of Fame as a manager? Or are you putting him in there as a hitter? Yeah. And here's the other thing: even if he didn't bet against his team, damn well, Puck, that if he bet on his team, he was coaching and managing that game like it was Game 7 of the World Series, and he was going to the bullpen, and there was a negative net impact on your team when you manage a game like that. And so I think he was a super competitive guy. You could tell by the way he played. Ask Ray Fosse, that all-star game where he just barrels into the catcher. And, I got a chance to sit with him one-on-one. He came, he's doing his book tour, and he came out to Oregon, and I found him in Eugene sitting in a lounge at a bar stool. And I just didn't like the guy as a person. I just found him kind of scummy. And you're right. There's just some ethics issues there. And we don't really know what he was into. But he had, I think, that sort of same competitive drive that Michael Jordan had, that X factor that George Plimpton wrote about. And, Jordan, notorious gambler on the golf course too. And so I just think these are guys that would always bet on themselves and always try to find an angle. And the competition itself was probably not enough for him. Mm-hmm. But you can't argue with the fact that the guy just had more hits than anybody. And how do you not have the guy who had more hits than anybody in the Hall of Fame? And I'll go further. I think Barry Bonds should be in there as well, but tell the ugly story. Like, he was part of this tarnished era of baseball. Tell the real story. It's supposed to be a museum, but
would think if they ever, and I agree, and this is what makes it always just a fascinating topic, because I agree with all of that. I think that no one would ever argue what he did on the diamond.
Yeah.
His competitive fire. I mean, there might have not been a more competitive player that ever put on a glove, ever put on baseball cleats than Pete Rose, ever. And so you admire that, the way he played the game. I mean, you brought up Ray Fosse, the way he played an all-star game, for God. I mean, no one plays that hard anymore in an all-star game like he did. If they were to put those guys in, would it be appropriate on the plaque to mention it?
Yeah, I think you have to tell the ugly history. That's part of any museum you go into, right? Sure. Like you're going to go into museums where you see things that are unsavory, and sometimes they're reminders of a dark time in our history, and people who are misbehaving, and people who lost their way, and you have genocides, and you have the ability to honestly tell the story is not just something that, like, hey, we all kind of prefer. It's something that I think fans deserve. Tell the story of how baseball lost its way in the 90s. I remember McGuire and Sosa. I was working at a small newspaper in California, and it was our lead story every day at the top of the sports page. McGuire and Sosa, how many do they have? Who are they playing against today? We're breaking in. Baseball got drunk on that era of McGuire and Sosa and then Bonds, and baseball feasted on that. And then baseball turned around and said, oh, these guys are scumbags. We never should have let them play. But, you decide if they're in the Hall of Fame or not. I've just been of the opinion. It's why I voted for Bonds. It's why I voted for Sosa and these guys. I've just been of the opinion that, like, it wasn't my job to police the game. Put them in, put a PED wing if you really want to go all the way, or at the very least on the plaque, tell the story. Yeah. It's a complicated thing. And we too often, I think, in our society want to make it black or white. And the truth is, it's shades of gray. It's knotted. It's gnarled. There weren't rules on the books for PEDs when Bonds was hitting those home runs. It was illegal. He could get arrested going, from Tijuana into the U.S. Carrying the cream and the clear. But he pushed the envelope, and man, he had 1 million home runs, and it was part of the controversial era in baseball. And look at Pete Rose down the way. He got a lifetime ban. This is what happens when you don't follow the rules. You get a lifetime ban, and he had to wait till he was dead. And he said 10 feet under. I don't know if he's 10 feet under, but it was, he might be much deeper than that. But it was, it was part of history. Let's tell the story. Why are we hiding from history?
Well, and here's a perfect segue. What happens first? He gets in, or we settle this Pac12 Mountain West mediation and whatever the hell's going on. I mean, what is the latest with it in terms of the mediation between the two that started on Monday?
Yeah, mediation started officially on Monday. I'm told that the mediator, we don't have a name for the mediator, but the mediator is somebody who has sat as a federal judge. So it's either a retired federal judge or maybe a current federal judge. And the reason why that's important is one of the lawsuits that's being mediated, there are at least 3, has to do with the antitrust case that the Pac-12 has filed against the Mountain West Conference, saying it was an antitrust violation to try to collect $55 million in poaching penalties and to leverage, hey, we're not going to give you these home games that you need to survive in 2024 unless you sign this deal. That is a case that would sit in front of a federal judge if it goes to trial. And so the objective is, I am told by litigators, to get that federal judge to look at the Pac-12 and look at the Mountain West and go, look, let me hear your legal argument. Okay, here's where you have a hole in your case. Let me hear your side legal argument. Here's where you have a hole in your case. Here's what might happen if you go to trial. You guys should get together and probably settle this and save yourselves some money and some risk. And so, yesterday, that's one of the lawsuits. There's also a contract law lawsuit that the Pac-12 has raised against the Mountain West. And then thirdly, there's a lawsuit in Denver that is Colorado State, Utah State, and Boise State suing the Mountain West over the exit fees. Like, are the exit fees 18 million? Are they 38 million? They would like to negotiate down the exit fees. I'm told all of those things are being mediated together. And I'm also being told it could be that, they went into the night last night. I don't know that. It could be that, this could be settled here in the next 48 hours. I'm kind of on call because I do think we're either one way or another going to get, hey, they are continuing to mediate, which is a good sign that they're working towards a settlement, or they're just not getting anywhere. They've called it after 2 days. Puck, I think we all expect this is going to get settled. It's just a matter of where it lands. And UNLV hanging in the balance too. Like, I'm sure that the schools are interested. I would love to know if UNLV is in the room as part of the mediation, because they could potentially be negotiating their exit fee as well.
Sure. And I think that's the best case scenario, that they resolve their mediation here between the two conferences, and then it ends up being UNLV joining the Pac-12. I think we would all agree that would be the best case scenario for the new Pac-12.
Yes. And it's interesting because Washington State and Oregon State, if you look at their 2026 and 2027 schedules, they're starting to schedule 4 non-conference opponents. And I found that very interesting that, and I asked, a source at one of those 2 schools, I said, should I be reading into that? Does that mean you're only taking 1 and you're going to need extra non-conference games and you're starting to line those up? And I was told that, no, don't read too deeply into it. If it is just 1 school, yes, they're going to need to have like 4 or 5 non-conference games, depending on how they arrange the conference schedule. So I think they are doing some preventative scheduling into the future. But simultaneously, I think the hope of the Pac-12 is that, they have 10 football playing schools, right? And so that would be, you add 1 full-time member and maybe you go after Memphis and Tulane as football-only members, or maybe Texas State as a football-only member and you get a toe into Texas. But so I think, though, the dream scenario would be UNLV and then maybe a Texas State or UTSA or a Memphis and Tulane playing football only.
Best case for them, would they like this to be resolved before they kick it off for this season?
Oh yeah, I think they need it resolved like now. Like,
I want it resolved now, but who knows? We always kick this we kick the can down the road with this whole thing.
It is, but there are deadlines, and July 1, 2026 is a firm deadline where you have to have 8 football. You have to have 8 all sports schools, and right now they have 7. Right. And in order to get there, though, there's about a year of onboarding, and I am told that the Pac-12 just is not comfortable going beyond July 1 of 25 without knowing who's in the conference. Now, Puck, I think they probably already know who's in the conference, and I think that they're waiting for this mediation and the settlement, because it doesn't help the Pac-12 if they come out and say, hey, we've got a great TV deal, we're getting a ton of money, better than expected, look at who's in the conference. That does not help your leverage position in mediation. So I think the more likely scenario is the Pac-12 has a very strong idea of what it wants to do. It's trying to hammer down the mediation. Media companies are sitting on the side, Puck. They're going to want to know who's in the conference before they sign those deals. And I think they probably have a strong idea of where the Pac-12 is leaning. We're
going to get, speaking of just more college athletics and college sports, this White House commission that they're thinking about forming. Do you think we get there with it? I love committees. God, there's nothing better than committees. Committees and committees on committees. And will Nick Saban be the guy that leads it?
It's fine if they do that, but I'm not really looking to a committee in Washington, D.C. to lead the way for college athletics. I think the bigger issue for the NCAA and the members is that they're getting sued into oblivion, and they need that to stop. Like, they need to figure out now. The individual states like Tennessee are coming up with their own NIL rules while the House settlement is being finalized, and people are trying to say, well, these are the rules. Tennessee, as a state, is saying, no, we've got our own set of rules. So I think that committee in D.C. at least provides a last resort where if it came to a federal law that had to be passed on NIL that superseded all the state laws, that's great. But I am also told that, the Power 4 schools, the Power 5 schools, because the Pac-12 is part of that, are all looking at trying to say, hey, should we sign something together that opts into a standardized set of NIL rules that can be enforced? And by the way, we don't play at schools that don't sign into this. That's sort of where they are today. I think that's what's going to happen. It's great that Nick Saban is rattling the saber in DC, but I think it amounts to politicians politicking at this point.
I did read that, or briefly kind of skimmed that piece about the four Power Four, or the Power Four conferences with that agreement NIL. Yeah. Did you say Wazoo and Oregon State are a part of that?
Yeah, the Pac12 is named in that House lawsuit, so it's really a Power Five when you talk about the regulations. And this actually, it breaks Teresa Gould's way, if you really want to think about it from the Pac-12's standpoint. I was looking at the CFP distributions. See, the Big Ten and the SEC are getting $21 million per school in this new TV deal that starts in 26. The ACC's at $14 million per school. The Big 12's at $12 million per school. And then two Pac-12 schools are getting $3.6 million. And yet they're on the hook for all the liabilities in the House lawsuit, and they're included. And so it's, I think, a strong negotiating point for Teresa Gould and the Pac-12 to be able to look at the Power Four and go, hey, look, we're on the hook like you guys, and you're allowing us to take place in the penalties of the House settlement, but we're not gaining, and we're not being able to participate in the CFP distributions in a way that's equitable. And the Pac-12 schools, Oregon State, Washington State, are getting $3.6 million per school in the first 2 years of the deal. Then it's look in 2028, and then they'll figure out. I think Teresa Gould in 2028 is going to go to the CFP committee and say, hey, we are shoulder to shoulder with you in this. We should be closer to what the ACC and the Big 12 are getting. I know Brett Yormark, the Big 12 commissioner, has also said he's not happy with only getting $12 million per school, while the Big 10 schools and SEC are getting $21 million. I think he's going to use that look-in provision in 2028 to try to boost his own conference. I will be very curious to see if Teresa Gould can get some traction there, because it just feels like she's got some leverage.
I want to do you did a follow-up story on the piece that we talked about a few weeks ago, Newburgh, Oregon, the 11U softball. Here's the irony of it. We're going to be in Bend, Oregon this week for a baseball tournament. Yeah. The team we're playing, baseball, from Newburgh.
There you go. There you go.
I can't wait for this one.
Just remember why you're there. It's not the big league.
I trust me. I know why I'm there. Yeah, but the follow-up was not on the young girl on the team or the coaches. It was the follow-up on and I told this to Jim. Yeah. The very impressive. Yeah. And I would like to reach out to her parents.
Yeah.
And congratulate them on what a fine young lady that they have raised. The 17-year-old umpire who is going to go play
Lily
college
Brooks.
softball at Santa Clara, Lily Brooks.
Yeah.
What a fascinating young woman.
Yeah. Great kid.
Impressive.
She is, she's the home plate umpire. All hell breaks loose. You got a coach on one team. People haven't seen the video. Got a coach on one of the teams who's, raising hell about birth certificates because the kid's tall and acting like an idiot. The adults are all losing their minds. People in the crowd are yelling at each other. There's obscene gestures being exchanged. It's escalating. Home plate umpire is a 17-year-old player who plays on the Dayton High School softball team. She's a catcher. She's going to Santa Clara on a full ride. She's a 4.0 student. She's second in her graduating class. She raises goats. She's like a 4-H'er on the side. She's got a side hustle. The most mature kid you could ever imagine. She does the right thing in that moment. She de-escalates the coach, calls the supervisor for the tournament over to the field, and instead of just standing there or getting some water, she walks down to first base to talk to the 11-year-old kid who had been singled out as there's no way you're 10 or 11 years old. And that kid's in tears. And she stops and tells the kid, hey, this isn't your fault. Don't let anybody put your fire out. You keep doing you. I've got you, and, proud of you. And just gives her, puts her arm around her. 17-year-old kid and 11-year-old kid having a nice moment while the adults are acting like idiots around him. And so I got in touch with Lily Brooks, and I just told her, I said, I'm so impressed with you. I've been, we've all officiated Little League games. It's a thankless job. And the coolest thing ever, Puck, is I asked her, I said, what did you make for that game? What do you get paid for that? Because there's no amount of money that would be enough to have to deal with what she was dealing with on that tournament. And she said, I don't even know what I get paid. She says, I'm just here because I love the game. I want to be part of the game. And, she's going to Santa Clara. She's like pre-law. She's got like 3 minors. That kid is going places. And,
Yes.
I put a little bit more about it on my Instagram. People want to see it, but really cool kid.
Yeah, very impressed. I want to read. I read this for Jim. I want to read the full quote for everyone. And I would encourage people go read it. Go to johncanzano.com and sign up to subscribe, please, because this is the type of content you get. You mentioned it, and she said about going over and talking to Stevens, the player in question, the 11-year-old. She said, quote, this is Brooks, the home plate umpire. I got a little emotional when I was talking to her. People are always going to tell you that you're too much of this or too little of that. She just turned 11. I told her, don't let anyone turn off your flame. Keep lighting it up. I felt really bad for her. I can only imagine. God, I love, John, that line of don't let, I'm going to use that.
Steal it.
Don't let anyone turn off your flame.
Yeah.
God, what a great line from a 17-year-old.
The wisdom and the poise. And I know 2 former major league umpires that like called World Series and All-Star games, Jim Joyce and Dale Scott. And I reached out to Dale Scott and I said, look, umpires know the rule book. And I go, but what differentiates like someone who knows the rule book from somebody who's just a great umpire? Because Lily told me that her regret was that she didn't throw that coach out of the game. She says, in hindsight, I probably should have thrown him out of the game. And I said, no, you did the right thing. And Dale Scott backed that up. And he said, young umpires are eager usually to throw someone out. And he said, the bigger thing is, can you de-escalate? Can you keep them in the game and keep them within the flow of the game in a way that works? That's what you want to strive for as an umpire. And there's a lot of mediation. Speaking of mediation, Senator Pac12 offices, there's mediation in that. And Lily Brooks got it right. I mean, I'm super impressed with that kid. She's going to do big things at Santa Clara. She's going to play catcher there. So let's see.
Yeah, that's great. Last thing for you. Why does Phil Knight, I mean, is it just age? Why does he not want to buy the Blazers?
Oh, I don't know if he doesn't not want to buy the Blazers. I think he's saying he's not going to bid on the Blazers. I think, Jody basically gave him a middle finger when he made that initial offer. She didn't even return his call. That's why it leaked, right? And that's why the New York Post got the stories about what a horrible, toxic owner trustee Jody is. So there's been some mudslinging back and forth. And I'll go back to the quote I got from an NBA executive. There's nothing one billionaire loves to tell another billionaire more than go pound some sand. And so I think you have that going on between Jody Allen and Phil Knight. So what happens? Blazers are for sale. Everybody's eyes go boom, right to Phil Knight. But Phil, he's not going to give her that leverage. Like, use me to get more money for this team. No. I think very wisely, he's playing chess here. He puts out a statement saying, I'm too old, And I think I'm 5 years ago, I had the energy. I think that statement has got a little bit of poetry in it. Because remember, when the Blazers said they weren't for sale, they said it would be 10 to 20 years maybe before the estate got settled. That was a shot at Phil Knight and his age originally. I think he's saying, oh, yeah, you're right. I am too old. I won't be shocked, Puck, if he comes in out of left field in the 11th hour of a deal to join a group that's already established, or if the deal gets done and then we find out later Phil was involved all along, just not by name. So I think he's doing a smart thing here, because if he's in this and he's a bidder, it's just going to drive the price of the franchise up. So I think he came out nice and early and said, oh, no, I'm not interested. I gotta see that to believe it.
Okay, what's in the oven? What do you got coming up next at johncanzano.com? I
am hot after this youth sports scene. There are a number of coaches, your viewers probably all know coaches, who have been forced out of jobs by the angry mob, by parents who are upset about playing time and the politics on campus. I've got a couple of coaches who are talking openly about that and how the NIL world is creeping into high school sports. I'm going to write a little bit about that. I'll be all over the Pac12 and Mountain West settlement discussions. And then I am pivoting towards, the college football season in a big way. So I'll have all that for anybody who's interested.
Well, I'm interested. johncanzano.com. Go sign up today. All right, my friend. We'll talk to you next week. Thanks, sir.
Take care.